Hey guys, as you may or may not have heard, I've got a new book coming out, Thrash Metal Drumming. It's going to be on Hudson Music as a downloadable, non-contact, virus-free ebook. It's also going to be on Amazon as a paperback, like this one, and should be coming out sometime in the next 2 weeks, I would imagine. Still don't have a date. Up here I'll have a link to the page on my website where I talk about my books, and in the description there'll be a link once it's out. Essentially, amongst the things that I talk about in there are, beats, fills, techniques, the nuts and bolts of it, but also some tips on kit setup and cymbal selection and stuff like that. And I think that's just as important for a thrash metal drummer or any drummer as is the actual playing. And of course I've got a whole series of videos on ergonomics and stuff, but I'm just going to take you through exactly the setup that I used when I was playing with Havok in 2007, 2008, 2009. These aren't the same cymbals, they aren't exactly the same drums, but it's set up in precisely the configuration that I would have used back then. And I'm not saying this is the only thrash metal configuration, obviously it's not, but it worked for me really well, and it's sort of the minimum you could get away with and still play a lot of thrash metal. Alright, so we're looking at my kit from the sort of throne perspective, give or take, what it would look like to me playing it. This is the exact configuration as far as placement that I would have used with Havok. It is not the same exact drums. These toms are the same, but the rest of it has been replaced because I've broken stuff and changed stuff over the years. But this is what it would have looked like from my perspective. So you can see the audience, the edge of the stage will be exactly in this frontward direction. Got a kick to the right, got a kick pedal to the left. Just make it as comfortable as possible. Yeah, that means the kick isn't facing perfectly forward, but I don't care about that. You can see I'm using a regular 5-piece. Most venues wouldn't have had more mics than that anyway, so it wasn't really an option to have a bigger kit. This is the minimum amount of kit that I'd want to play in a thrash band though, because it's known for big fills and having a lot of interesting stuff going on. 4-piece maybe wouldn't have been enough. This is sort of the minimum amount of cymbals I could have gotten away with. Hi-hat, crash, crash, ride, China. Because of course you need more than one crash to break up passages where there are a lot of crashes. Otherwise one crash just gets really monotonous. Also you need one over here and one over here so you don't have to reach across the kit as much. And of course metal, you need a China at some point. And a ride and a hi-hat is standard for like all music. So I couldn't really get away with less. Could have had more, but I would have had to have more stands in the bag. That's extra weight, so I wanted to go with the minimum whenever possible. These are the exact pedals I used at the time. They're like 20-year-old Iron Cobras, and they still work pretty well. I would have typically used a 20-inch kick, 14-inch snare, 10, 12, 14-inch toms. I have all that here except for the kick, which this is more on my recording kick, it's 22. But live I like the 20. I like the small sizes because they don't take up as much space and they project better. You can't always be relying on the sound guy and the miking to make you sound good, especially in dive bars and small venues if you're just starting out. When I was touring with this kit set up with Havok, we had an EP and a couple demos out, but our debut album had not yet come out. So we were not very big. We got sort of the bottom of the barrel bookings a lot of the time. And so if you could get this mic, you were doing well. Like I said, these aren't the exact same cymbals I was using. I was using a very similar set though. I had a ZBT Plus medium ride. Medium. It was actually really heavy, probably almost as heavy as this Z Heavy Power. And with a nylon stick or whatever, it would have been extremely pingy also. This one sounds a little bit better, of course. But I was using Pisces hi-hats. These are dyno beats. These are a little bit better again, but they didn't have them at the time. I used a very similar crash to this, a stage crash instead of an explosion crash. Not that different. I would have used a rock crash over here. This is a medium crash, pretty similar. And then this is exactly the China I used back then. It's the third one I've had, but it's the same model. It's Oriental China Trash. And I think those sound really great for thrash because they're short and punchy. Now you'll notice like I don't have really huge cymbals and I don't have really dry cymbals or dark cymbals because of course that doesn't sound good for thrash metal. You want bright cymbals that open up quickly and have a lot of power but then don't decay forever. Everything's about having a tight sound, a punchy sound, but that then kind of goes away after a little bit. You don't want it to just like bellow on forever because you're playing a lot of hits in a row. Do you have to have this setup to play thrash? No. You can have a different setup if it suits your playing better. But I think this is, like I said, the minimum I could get away with and have the palette of sounds that I wanted. and this is the arrangement that made the most sense for the songs I was playing. On the record, Burn, I have a stack here of like junky broken cymbals. It actually sounds pretty cool. And I didn't typically take it on tour because I didn't want to bring another stand. I also was concerned about weight and space in the trailer, and so this setup made sense for that as well. I used a minimum amount of stands, smaller drums, and it fit better. Okay, so obviously again, you don't have to do what I did, but this worked for me, and I think it could work for you if you play music similar to me. Again, I have this book coming out, Thrash Metal Drumming, sometime probably in the next 2 weeks, so keep an eye out for that. It'll have, kit setup and cymbal selection advice, sort of like what we had here, but it also has tons of beats, fills, warm-ups, transcriptions of 64 different phrases out of real thrash metal songs from bands like Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax, you name it, right? So hopefully you pick that up at least as a way to support the channel, but also to learn something about thrash metal that maybe you didn't know. But hopefully that was interesting to you guys. Have fun out there, take it easy, and I'll see you next time.